Okay, let's take a look at number 19 on page 77. Okay, the inverse of f of x is equal to root x is f negative 1x equals x squared, where x is greater than or equal to 0. Graph both functions and use them to explain why the restriction is necessary on the domain of the inverse. Okay, okay. The domain and range of the function, so here for function, become the range and domain of the inverse, respectively. So they switch. The positive domain of the inverse is the same as the range of the original function. And the range in our original function is all positive, therefore the domain in the inverse will be all positive. B. Determine the equation, including any restrictions, of the inverse of each of the following functions. First one is g of x equals negative root x minus 5. Okay, well, we have g of x equals negative root x minus 5. Y equals root x minus 5. That's our function. So for our inverse, we switch the two variables or interchange. And we solve in terms of y. Squaring both sides. And we have y equals x squared plus 5. Therefore, the inverse of g of x is x squared plus 5 with the restriction x has to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, let's take a look at 2. 2 states that h of x equals root negative x plus 3. I forgot to state the restriction in the first example. So the restriction in this example is what's under the root has to be greater than or equal to 0. So x is greater than or equal to 5. That's our restriction. If we take a look at this one, basically we have negative x has to be greater than or equal to 0. Divide by negative 1, and our sign switches. X is less than or equal to 0. Okay, so let's take a look at the inverse, and we just have y equals root negative x plus 3. X equals root negative y plus 3. X minus 3 equals negative root negative y, squaring both sides. X minus 3 squared equals negative y. Y equals negative x minus 3 squared. Okay, so our inverse is of h of x, x to the negative 1, is negative x minus 3 squared, and our restriction is x has to be greater than or equal to 3. Okay, so whatever we're squaring has to be greater than or equal to 0. So x minus 3 is greater than or equal to 0. Let's take a look at 3. This is j of x. So j of x equals root 2x minus 7 minus 6. So for our restriction, 2x minus 7 has to be greater than or equal to 0. 2x is greater than or equal to 7. X has to be greater than or equal to 7 over 2. So to find the inverse, we first rewrite the equation in terms of x and y, and we interchange the x and y variables. So simplifying in terms of y, we get x plus 6 equals root 2y minus 7. Squaring both sides, we get x plus 6 squared equals 2y minus 7. Y is equal to 1/2 x plus 6 squared plus 7 over 2. So the inverse of j of x is equal to 1/2 x plus 6 squared plus 7 over 2. X is greater than or equal to -6.